Hello and welcome to our very first podcast. My name is Jacques and I'm with my co-host Matthew Mullen. This is going to be something completely random. We're just throwing together some ideas about life, the universe and everything, so to speak. And tonight we're going to kick off with one of the biggest topics in the world, the real world. It's basically just a conversation, and we'll elaborate a little bit more about who we are and what we are looking for in this podcast. Hello, Matthew. How are you?
I'm doing all right, I guess. Thanks, Jacques. I've got this pre-programmed response. I have to say, oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing amazing. And it's a lot to do with your radio voice, but
My radio voice is only for the intro, and now I will go into regular Jacques voice. I find you have to do a radio voice for the beginning. It just gives you a little bit of that pizzazz, that feeling of like, oh
it
yeah.
does. That's why I got so excited, and I was gonna say, dude, I'm doing great. But it's not entirely true, which is what I guess we could get into in a sec or two. But yeah, man, like you said, we should just give a quick intro about ourselves. So seeing as I'm already talking, let me just carry on. Well, I met you in high school in Hermanus, and after school I went to UCT. I started doing BSc in computer science. After a year of that, I had like a little, um, I guess, re-evaluation, and I went the full BA route, screenwriting, English, full media. Graduated with that, did our honors in English, and then went to teach English in Korea for 2 years. Had a blast. Now I'm back in South Africa since March. I've been living at home. I've been working on this book, and it's towards the end of 2014, and suddenly this real world is kicking in for me in a very big way. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Where are you at the moment?
At a very different place to you.
Okay.
I want to first ask you a question. What is it like to get back in the mode of living at home after a couple of years away?
Well, Jock, it's not just that I've been away for a couple of years, it's that I haven't lived at home since I was 18. And now I'm 26 and I'm back at home. I've been used to all these freedoms, and I've been used to being around friends all the time. I've been used to doing a lot of things that I wouldn't do at home, behaving in ways I wouldn't behave at home, because it's just like before we started this this specific podcast. Now we were chatting about generation gap, and there's something in the generation gap that means you can't act the same way at home as you act with like everyone else. Um, what I mean by everyone else, I mean like in your social group.
I think I
Um,
agree with that.
and getting Yeah, so that adjustment has been tough, really tough. And it's starting to catch up with me now after months. Maybe it's a bit of cabin fever and all that as well.
Okay, that's fair. I always wonder about the interesting thing, whether it is that you can't have that experience with your family or your parents because uh, we are just so different, or is it
Yes.
that they were exactly the same and having a child has that effect on you that you just become this completely different human being and it just seems so different?
You raise a really good point. So I guess now over these last few months that I've been living at home, because I've been talking with my parents every night, which we wouldn't we haven't really done for years and years and years because I haven't been at home. It hasn't been possible. It's been like a once a week on a Sunday Skype kind of thing.
Mhm.
So now it's almost like we're starting to get to know each other for the first time in a deeper sense.
Not as a
Um,
parent-child, but almost as kind of equals, adults now.
yeah, it's feeling more like that now.
Mhm.
And now for the first time I realize how incredibly differently I view life and reality to how they do, but also at the same time how I am all that I am that makes me me is just like a mix of what they are. It's like it's a perfect combo of my dad's traits and my mom's traits. That's all that's going on with me.
Okay, very
And
interesting.
it's crazy. It's just then plus it's like so it's their traits in my body that's had my life experience that's given me these thoughts that I have. Um, and these thoughts on life that I have are so different to their thoughts.
Mhm. Okay, okay. Very interesting start from you, Matthew. I suppose it's time for me to introduce myself a little bit. Um,
Yes.
I am originally a person from the center of South Africa, a Vrystater, as we say, a real Afrikaner. And it was very funny because up until I was about 9 years old, I couldn't speak any English. And so my my experience in life, I think, has been shaped a lot by that, because I think my foundation as in childhood was from a very conservative, strict kind of world, and then to almost go 180 from that when I moved to Hermanus from about 9 years old, go straight to an English school. Um, Actually, I went to a Christian school, and that is a story for a different time, a big, big story. Um, Yes, I met you in high school. I always think I've been a bit of a strange person in the sense that I wasn't a person with a group. I didn't belong to any single friendship group. I just had one very large friendship group that transcended the general school stereotypes. Um, I was friends with the nerds and the popular kids and you, because I think we became friends because we liked each other and we sat next to each other in English, and then we kind of drifted apart and drifted back with music, and I think
Yeah, yeah.
that solidified our friendship, um, which is an irony in of it and of itself, because I think that one thing is what has kept is what started a journey which kept us in touch all these years. An amazing
Yeah, I
point.
think about that often.
And I don't know if I'm in the same place as you in the real world with our topic tonight. I started working from about 13, 14 years old out of necessity. Um, I didn't go to university after school because I didn't have funds for university. And I've kind of had to almost go the working class route, forge my own destiny, so to speak. Um, and there's part of me that's really proud of it because I've achieved a lot on my own way with my own abilities, and that is something that I really feel proud about. But there's another part of me that looks at someone like you who's had some of these experiences, and I'm like, damn, I wish I could have done that. It's a very strange place. But you say you're like, you've now confronted the real world, you're ready to tackle it. I felt like I had a midlife crisis at 23 or 24, and I was like, I'm ready to retire now. I've worked for 10 years, I'm done. So that's my
But
starting position.
it's so interesting. A couple of things you've just said. So the one where you looked at my experiences and you felt envious of them because I hear your stories sometimes and I think the exact same thing.
Hmm.
I think I wish I had gone through all the madness that you've gone through, all these small jobs and how, because it's made you so incredibly unique. Um, and what it feels like to me now, so I went to university and we had to scrape together funding because I
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
have
I do
funding,
know
but
that.
my parents are always like, "You're going to university." So I took out a lot of bank loans and luckily my marks were alright and I got funding from the government. So, but still I had to pay it back.
Hmm.
And I went over to Korea with the main goal being, okay, I'm going to earn a lot of money there for the first time in my life, but I have to pay back my loans. And I did. I've now got, in 2 months, I'll be debt free.
Oh, wow. Well done.
But and yeah, I'll be debt free. But now I feel I'm 26, I'm debt free. Great. I've achieved all these small things. My health is amazing. My fitness is great. I can optimize my day. I can get energy. Can wake up early. All these positive things. But I also feel like I've achieved nothing.
Hmm.
Um, and like what you were saying earlier, with what's kept us together as friends is very much this music, this writing music and playing songs together. And we've kind of had this dream of starting a band at some point.
It's a
And
good dream.
as I've been, yeah, it's a great dream. As I've been thinking back on like what got me through Korea and um, what my motivations have been to just keep going on, a very big part of it has been this dream of one day we're going to start a band.
Hmm.
Um, and now this real world crashing in that I'm feeling at the moment is all these dreams I've had in school since a kid, maybe even in university. Now they're feeling like they aren't happening,
Okay,
and now I
okay.
have to, out of necessity, plunge into the real world. Like what you did at 13, I'm now doing at 26, like
Interesting.
double the amount of time later.
Well, it's an interesting thing to listen to that, because I think a different perspective that you get starting from 13 as opposed to 26 is that I didn't have years of hope, um, of like these dreams. I didn't have that. That's not to say I didn't have hope. I think I always, it's a human, it's a strength and a weakness in humans. But my future was always tinged very strongly with reality. Like, I knew when we were 17 and I started playing guitar that it was extremely unlikely that I would be the next Linkin Park, System of a Down, Katy Perry, you name the band, it doesn't matter. Um, but despite that, I also knew that if you want to achieve something, you need a lot of luck, but you actually have to work towards it. And so it's a very strange thing with me that I always worked really hard towards the paths that I wanted to be, um, because I felt that no one was gonna give it to me, and if I did, I could either grow up and be an average person just like everybody else, or I could say screw that mission, I'm gonna be who I want to be, and that's the path I'm trying to lead.
So that's weird, man, because I started working in a sense when I was 16. I mean, I
Hmm.
would work holiday jobs, and I've worked every holiday since I was 16. But all that taught me was work sucks.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that, those elements of the real world. I mean, so I packed shells in Spa. That was my first job.
Hmm.
And
Bad job.
I mean, I'm a, I mean, we grew up in Amanus. It's this very small town. I'm a white guy. If, people around town like know your parents and know
Hmm.
your Oma and Opa, and they see you in Spa, and they know who you are. But purely because you're packing shells. Like they know it's a holiday job, but purely because you're now wearing a Spa t-shirt and you are packing shells, there's this thing where they look down on you.
Hmm.
And I saw that, and not, and I, when I say they look down on you, I don't mean they were being actively condescending. I mean, it's this ingrained unconscious response.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes.
look at him packing shells.
Hmm.
That's kind of pathetic. And you see it in the way they treat you, the way they speak to you, in their demeanor, and that immediately, like from such a young age, I just thought never want to be like that. I never want to be one of those people who is so unconscious of
Yeah.
how you're like basically like you're being brainwashed into looking down at certain people because of
No,
some job.
fair enough. I want to say, firstly, before I carry on, I want to just apologize. I didn't mean to imply that because you went to university, you were wealthy. Um, I understand that you worked hard to get there, and that there was a bit of good fortune in that, and there was also a lot of effort from many people in your family. So I apologize if I implied that unintentionally. Um,
What's so crazy is that it, when we speak like this, we often, I think South Africans have this as a common thread that runs through South African communication. We we try to summarize a lot in a very short
mhm.
sentence or two, and that means that sometimes we don't express ourselves fully.
Yeah.
So, like exactly what you just did now, I know you didn't mean anything nasty by it at all, but because you wanted to just summarize something real quick, you like leave out this other
hmm
part that then gives a, it like leaves a, it might lead to a bad impression.
Yes, yes, no, completely, and that's why I wanted to just say that. The second thing you said about packing shelves, uh, it's very funny that you say that. I think one of the things I learned very early on in life is my father died when I was 8. I'd been 8 for a week. Um, and a very strange thing I learned from that whole experience. Many, I think almost like your father's death is a terrible thing, and there's nothing that will ever make that not a terrible time in my life. But there are so many, and I don't want to use the word gifts and have people misunderstand me, but there were so many things that I've received in life as a consequence to that that have actually helped me be better and more successful in life than I think I could have been without that. As an example, immediately the first thing that happens following the death of your parent, when you're the oldest child, in an Afrikaans family at least, at such a young age, is you get thrust upon you this: you are the man of the house, and you have to be strong and you can't fail. So you're burdened with this feeling of,
It's heavy.
there's no failure, that's not gonna happen. But at the same time, when I was then working, and when I was about 13, 14, and I had similar things with people looking in that kind of way. People do know you. Um, I didn't find that it was. I didn't feel personally affronted by it. I just, for some reason, part of my personality was always like, you know what, they just don't understand. If they knew, they wouldn't act the way they did. But what I did gain from
Yes.
that is I now truly, truly despise pity. When someone pities me, it is probably the thing that makes me the most angry. It's a very strange side effect, I think, because I feel like, listen, I've had bad things happen to me before. I don't need your pity to get through this situation.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
probably an irony, a strength that I've got, that is I've learned to be independent. But here, let's talk about a negative thing. I think I've got this unreasonable uh, problem with pity, because pity isn't something that's necessarily bad. They're doing it from a good place.
Yeah, but I guess, do you feel like you can't help yourself getting angry if
hmm
someone pities you? Like it's ingrained into who you are now. It's like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like the number one emotion that you come across for the first 7 years or so after your father's died is pity. The first thing that happens
Mm.
is you get given pity, and it just becomes tiring, I think, to get
And
that.
it's a useless emotion. Pity doesn't make the other person feel better. It
Yes.
doesn't change the situation. It doesn't do anything at all. Um, and especially if the other person, like me, I can't relate to what you went through at all. I've
Yeah, yeah.
I have no one in my family's died. I've never even been to a funeral. Like I have
I hate funerals.
literally no idea. I have no idea what you've gone through. So it's almost wrong. It's
hmm
almost like morally wrong of me to pity you because I've got nothing to add
Yeah, yeah, no.
to your
I
situation.
completely understand, and one of the things that I've actually experienced that's the most interesting from that whole thing is, now it's been 18 years since my father has died. It's something that I've well and truly put behind me. Um, Occasionally I'll still have a memory that hits me for some reason, and I'll feel a little bit emotional, a little bit misty-eyed. But for the most part, even speaking about it now, it's a very distant thing. I don't really have that tug of feeling as I've done. 18 years is enough to have moved on. But I've had people be angry with me because they're like, how can you be so calm? How can you be so okay with that whole thing? And it's a very strange situation to find yourself in, where the bad thing happened to you and some person who has nothing to do with it is telling you how you should feel. That's a very strange thing.
So I mentioned earlier I've been writing this year since I've been home, and what I started writing was this fantasy story, like a choose your own adventure, branching plot narrative, fun thing. And halfway through the process, I became really disillusioned with it for absolutely no reason. And I thought, this is just another fantasy story. It adds nothing to the world. So I started writing this deeply personal, psychoanalytical type of thing, which is similarly going to be designed achronologically and kind of using the technology of the fantasy story, designed for mobile, click through hyperlink style, but now telling this very personal story. And in the writing process, I've obviously been like delving deeply into my own psyche. And that was a very long way of getting to what I want to say, which is when someone when someone approaches you and they come to you and they're like, I don't understand how you can't feel a certain way about this thing. That's them not dealing with it right. Like when they say that to you, it's they haven't figured out how to deal with something similar in their own life. And I know this only because I do that all the time.
Okay.
But now I'm becoming more and more aware of it now. So when you might say like blah 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 happened in my life today, and then I'll say, but how can you be so blasé about it? Almost every single time, if I'm honest with myself, it boils down to something similar happened in my life that I haven't figured out how to deal with yet, and then I, for want of a better phrase, lash out at you to like disguise my own problem or inadequacy.
That's a very interesting way. I never thought of it like that. Interesting way to put it. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me. I actually think I'm going to remember that because it'll probably help me. I might have done that unconsciously myself to some people.
Sometimes that just helps me. If I'm emotionally jaded about something,
Yes.
and someone calls me out on it, then I can look at them and say, okay, I see what's going on here. You have a problem with this. You haven't figured this thing out yet, this thing that I have figured out. And that helps me not feel so, that it makes me not feel like so much of a emotionless robot anymore. It makes me more feel like, oh, I've just dealt with this thing that you maybe haven't dealt with. Or that's, maybe saying you haven't dealt with it is not even the right term. It's maybe more just, it's currently in the present an issue for this other person.
Yes, maybe it's something they haven't encountered before.
All that, yeah.
I would like to ask you, we're speaking about the real world, and we've just spoken a little bit about what I've gone through. Very, very top level, but I want to know from you, before you've had to confront this real world, like your safety world or your children's world, I don't really know what we'd call it.
Okay.
Tell me
I think
about
I understand
that.
exactly what you mean.
Like, what was life like
Okay.
growing up for you before you had to deal with the rigors of the real world?
Okay.
Like as a child growing up.
Yeah, so there's one thing I can say that will be very revealing. So I grew up in a very Christian household my whole life, and all my friends at school, like, were surface level Christians, and I was a believer, like I was a staunch believer. Not from a rational perspective, not where I'd studied the Bible and thought arguments through, just it felt like something had been hardwired into me, this belief that there is God and that there is a plan for my life. And that belief has been strong in me my entire life. Then I went to university, and for the first time I met friends who were outspoken atheists.
Mm-hmm.
And I became friends with them, and I'm like, oh, these are just normal people. And then after a while, I was like, oh, not only are these just normal people, they're much better people than I am in a moral sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that bugged me for a while because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how you could have good morals without a belief in God. So I asked a few friends, and this answer was so simple, and then it made so much sense, and it rocked my world. And the answer was, our morals have come from, rather, your morals have come from, you got told this is the right way to live. But our morals, our like atheistic worldview, we've had to figure out what is right by ourselves. In other words, no one told me what to believe. I've had to figure it out myself.
Mm-hmm. And some,
Wait,
yes, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
that might have been a bit confused. What I'm saying is, me the Christian has been told what to believe and what is right my whole life and has never questioned it. Whereas these atheist friends I made at university, they've they've designed their moral framework based on their real life experience and what is right and wrong for them in the real world.
No, very very true. If you have morality from the Christian viewpoint, it's obviously all meant to be objective, and there's a definitive right and a definitive wrong on every
Yeah.
single action. And
Yes.
and when you're looking at morality through atheist lenses, so to speak, subjectivity is not like required. There are some objective morality atheists, but for the most part, you have to kind of accept a very subjective worldview that sometimes there can be multiple answers for a single question, and
Yes.
or only bad answers, or 3 or 4 good answers on a specific topic.
What I mean more is, basically the way I had been raised and the belief system that I held was completely unchallenged for 19 years of my life. It was just, that's the way it is. No one ever discussed anything. No one ever, we never spoke about things. It was like, sex before marriage is wrong. Case closed. End of story. There's nothing to talk about.
Yes, yes.
Um,
That is
it,
a very interesting area to go down, because growing up, your parents give you these guidelines, like this is how
yeah.
you live. Was this religious moment the first real confrontation with something that you'd been taught growing up? Like, because you kind of just accept what your parents say, because why would they
Yes.
lie to you?
Yes.
So that's the thing. Was this your first real, like, knocking your head on the wall moment?
Yes. So certainly, like, there's two stages, I guess, that both happened in university. The first was those conversations with friends who were openly atheist, who I thought they're actually better people than I am. And then years later, there were a few more like rational arguments. And um, during English classes, we came across the idea that early Christianity may have been some kind of crazy mushroom fertility cult, and people had written all these books about this, and they designed all, like,
No way.
people were taking this stuff really seriously. But why that shook me is that I was like, here's this whole class of other people who have this entirely different view of all religions and this religion specifically, and there's reason behind it, and they try and explain the way certain things happen. So for the first time I kind of encountered, okay, well, here are the Ten Commandments or whatever, here's the way you need to live your life, but here are actual real reasons why that may have come about. um, I mean, I'm speaking very abstract now. Let me use some concrete examples. So we mentioned sex before marriage is wrong. like it's a sin and you can't do it. But a possible reason for that would be hundreds and thousands of years ago, there were no contraceptives and there were no cures for venereal diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So if you slept around and you spread syphilis, lots of people were going to die.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing that could be done about it. So it makes a lot of sense to a way to make your society work and to not let everyone die is just say only sleep with one person. Like
And what reinforces that? Well, God told me. It's a
yes,
very
yes,
strong reinforcement. What I wanted to
yes.
say, to you is, I don't know if you've watched a movie called The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais.
I don't think so.
I would really recommend it to you. Go and watch The Invention of Lying. It's a beautiful movie, and it speaks very strongly on this exact point we're speaking about right now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you as well. Now, with you growing up and deciding these things for yourself, is it then necessary to put some of your beliefs on hold when you go back to speaking with your parents?
That's that's been a big one. So just so let me just kind of resume where I was, and then I'll get to your question because that'll make sense. So towards the end of university, okay, well, so where I was at that first point is then I started feeling that cognitive dissonance like really strongly for a while, where I had all these beliefs that I'd grown up with, and suddenly, I guess the way I truly felt about it at like a gut level was in deep conflict with the rational belief hardwired system. So I started getting into the game, and I started like
the game,
wanting to date girls, and eventually I had sex, and the world didn't collapse. I wasn't a sinner. God didn't strike me down. Basically, there was no difference between not doing it and doing it.
Okay, I want to stop
And
you just there quickly.
Okay.
Before you answer my question, I want you to explain to me the real world experience of the first time you had sex. Like, you don't have to go into details about the event, but I want to talk on a mind level.
Okay, on a mind level. Well,
like
I've been writing about that incident specifically. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but
like how did you feel?
I'll just tell you the
going
story.
Up
I'll tell you the story.
Let's go.
Okay,
I'm excited.
This is the story. So there's a girl, let's call her Jay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we were housemates in the student student digs.
Okay.
For 2 years, and we'd been friends for years before that, so we'd known each other for a long time, and we had like this chemistry. We always just had this chemistry, and we were very flirty, and we'd like spank each other in the kitchen. And then one or two nights we'd go out clubbing, and we'd both be really drunk, and we'd kiss, and it would be fun and games, and we'd laugh. Then another night, it was called the Let's Do Something Illegal night.
Ooh.
The housemates, oh dude, it was great. The housemates all got together, and we had drinks, and we ran around the neighborhood. I jumped over someone's wall and dipped my hair in the pool. And then it wasn't extreme enough, so we played on a construction site until the cops drove past, and we all like hid giggling behind the rebar, thinking that we were being quiet ninjas, but actually we were making so much noise. Cops didn't see us great. Then it wasn't good enough, so we hopped the fence of our high school, which will go unnamed, and stole the rugby post cover, and then like ran giggling like children back to the house. Then everyone passed out in the garden, and then like one by one people started going back into the house to go to bed. And there was this guy, let's call him D, one of the housemates. So Jay's the girl and D's the guy. D's like the most diligent, conscientious person I've ever met in my whole life.
Okay.
And this specific night, he had forgotten his keys to the house inside. So he borrowed my keys to let himself in the house.
Okay.
Like this really freak random occurrence. Besides the whole night in itself, like the housemates never got together and did that kind of thing. So there were two really weird circumstances going on at the same time. Okay, so then
The universe was
he's in the
aligning
house,
for you.
right? So he's inside with my keys, and Jay and I were on the garden, and we started fooling around. And then I said, okay, I want to do this. So I said, let's go to my room. And I didn't have my keys.
Oh dear.
So I was locked out of my room. I was living in a room outside the main house.
Okay.
And then the moment was ruined. Like, it would
It
have,
was spontaneous.
things would have gone down. Things would have gone down. It was, I mean, on the grass already outside, we were leading up to doing the deed.
Okay.
And so it felt like the universe had built me up to have this experience, and then this freak occurrence made it not happen. So that threw me a bit, which ties completely into how I've had this belief my entire life, like God has a plan for your life. And even when I stopped believing in God in a traditional Christian sense, that core belief of there's a destiny and a plan for your life and things will work out, that stayed strong. Okay, so that night nothing went down. Then months later, still with Jay, there was again a completely random night. We'd like dropped off a friend at an airport, and then we were just sitting in the lounge chatting, and Jay said, we're gonna play this drinking game now. So she pours some old brown sherry, and we start drinking, and she gets me drunk really fast. We play that game, Never Have I Ever, where you say, I've never done X, and if the other person has done X, then they must drink. But obviously she knew me really well, so she kept saying things that she knew I'd done. And
I would like to
got me drunk real quick.
point out I've never is a much better and shorter name for that game. I never. Instead of Never Have I Ever.
It rolls trippingly off the tongue.
Okay.
Anyway, so she gets me in a very happy mood, and then she tells me, you're the only guy I could ever see myself being with. And I guess I should just add in real quick, she'd been experimenting with girls as well for a while, and she had a boyfriend before, which didn't work out for her. And then she drops this bombshell on me, and I, of course, had no idea how to respond. I was just like dumbstruck. So she told me, she said, are you okay? Well, I've just shared this real big thing with you. You need to share something real big with me. And she obviously wanted me to say something about how I felt about her, but it's not that I didn't realize that in the moment. It's that I realized it, but like chose to not take her up on that offer, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Not like meet. No, that's a better way to put it, is to not meet her at that level. So I told her this other story, which was like a way to dodge the heaviness of what she'd said to me. So I told her this story about how my phone was stolen once in Salt River because I'd made this terrible decision and gotten off the train in a wrong area, which is a story for another day.
Great story for another day.
It is a good story for another day. But then, anyway, so then I felt like, oh, that was the wrong thing to say, but it was too late, I'd said it. But somehow then, it seemed like she had a plan in her head. Like, she wanted to have sex that night. So, regardless of me having kind of ruined the moment by telling her this wrong story, she just, like, lunged me, as the student term was in the day. So she just jumped at me and we started making out, and then we were like lying on the bed in the lounge of the student house, because there was a bed in the lounge. I don't know why. There just was one. And
Bonus.
then I said, let's go to my room. So we went to my room and we did the deed. And how it was this. I guess I'd been wanting. There were a lot of. I mean, there's so much more backstory to everything in terms of where my headspace was. But that year, I decided, okay, I want to have sex.
Okay. Okay.
And there were a
Excuse me.
couple of situations um, where I almost did, and for it almost feels like that fate destiny type situation again. It just didn't happen. Um, so I was in this headspace of like really being excited and really looking forward to it. So this night with Jay comes, and I was really drunk. I couldn't get fully hard. Like
Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
I had whiskey dick,
It's a thing. Whiskey
and
dick. It's a thing.
it's a real thing. So that was confusing for me, and also, man, it, I guess there was this, there was this, to keep it on like a high level, there was this misconnect of energies between us,
Okay.
where it was like, it was almost like, here's this thing that she decided she wanted to do, like she wanted to have this experience,
Okay.
and the the mood was like artificially created. It was like there wasn't that real chemistry between us in that moment. Um, it almost felt like a bit of a cold act where we were just doing this thing. But I mean, fair enough. It was my first time. Like I had no idea what was going on,
That's fair.
and
We've all been
yeah,
there.
but it seems like when I think back on it, I I think she had a good time.
Okay.
Um, but I was in my head, like in my head, and I was thinking the whole time. I was like hyper aware of everything that was going on. It wasn't that I was nervous, it was that I was scared that I wouldn't please her. Like I was scared that the next morning she'd look at me differently and be like, "You're not a real man," kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I mean, I was scared of being inadequate, and that made me not focus on my own enjoyment at all and try to. I was like watching her the whole time and trying to figure out, is she having fun? How's it going for her? Like um, I was completely not enjoying it.
Yeah, you were focused so much on her and trying to make sure that it went well for her that you didn't even think about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
going to tell you something. I think I'm not sure if this has something to do with similar parenting or similar uh, religious thinking or any what similarity that we have, but my first time was exactly the same in terms of that aspect. Uh, I was
yeah.
very focused on making sure that the girl had a really good time, and I can honestly tell you, my first time was probably one of the worst experiences that I've ever had.
Yes. Um,
And not because the girl was bad, I want to just point that out. Just
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in my own
No,
head.
it's certainly the same in my case. It was completely my own inability to just go with the moment and have fun and like let go a bit, which I've learned to do consequently. But yeah, man, that experience was certainly nothing like I had imagined it.
Okay, interesting. And
Um,
so
yeah,
leading back into the direction we were going. Now you come back. You've been free since you're 18. You have all these new mental uh, ideas and philosophies, and you come back home and you're confronted with the old ideas that you left with. How does that play
yes.
out?
I mean, what you asked me earlier was, I think you phrased it something like this, like, do I have to leave some of my beliefs behind
Mm-hmm.
when I'm at home?
Yes.
And the simple answer is yes. Um, and that's that's been very difficult for me because I've been at when I was a student, I go home for holidays, and I would have to do the same thing. I'd have to almost like pretend a little bit for a month or a week or whatever, and that was fine. Now it's been 6 months living at home, and there's a bit of psychic tension or pressure of constantly not expressing myself fully,
Mm-hmm.
not not being honest. I feel like I'm just not being honest,
Okay. Okay.
and it's starting to wear at me a bit.
Okay. Would you
I mean, that's been a big adjustment.
would you say your parents are aware of that, or one of them, or do you think not at all?
That's very difficult for me to say.
So there hasn't been a
What I
tension
can
with the parent because of that.
no, 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 no. It's because I've been. I mean, I'm very good at like I was saying earlier with the sex thing.
Mm-hmm.
I live very much in my head, and I'm constantly aware of how I'm coming across to other people,
Okay.
far too much, far more than I should be. So I'm very good at like micromanaging how people perceive me. So I think my parents have kind of no idea what's really going on
Okay.
in my head.
Okay.
But I mean, it's completely my own. Fault is the wrong word, like my own doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've not told them certain things because I mean, the honest answer is just because I'm scared of how they'll take it.
That's fair.
Um, but I do know there are certain things that if I tell them, it will hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
It'll hurt them deeply, and it's maybe better to just not tell them.
Fair enough. I took the other road. My parents know exactly what I think and how I feel and how I live, and maybe I think that has given us a better relationship on the one hand, but I will not lie and say that there wasn't hurt when those confessions were made, and that there
Yeah,
wasn't some struggle. Um,
yeah,
I remember having the conversation with my parents when I was just like, you know what, I am not religious. Uh, that if you're a South African, you know how religious South Africans are, and so that conversation was a really tough one. When I was speaking to understand how religious my family is, the Christian school I referred to earlier that I went to was actually an anti-evolution Christian school. That's how that's how
really.
fundamental it is. Um, and so I basically had to sit my parents down and be like, listen, well, my mom and my stepfather, and be like, listen, I'm not even going to pray anymore at the tables because it makes me feel like I'm lying to your faces and stuff like that.
Okay.
And that, for probably a good year and a half after that, there was a lot of hurt and sore feelings and stuff. But I will say I'm lucky in the sense that my parents were never angry with me. They were
Okay.
hurt and disappointed, and they have tried to persuade me a number of times as to me being incorrect on whatever my confession was, because I've had many. But for the most part, they are good people, so they haven't like been bad about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm lucky for that.
Again, what's becoming so clear to me now is now again, I guess to bring it back to the real world is I have a lot of fear inside me
Hmm.
about on all different types of um, in all different types of circumstances, and there have been times in my life where I've overcome it really easily, and there have been other times in my life like now where it's incredibly difficult for me to overcome the fear. Um, for example, with my parents and telling them certain things and not telling them certain things, I did broach the subject of religion with them
Hmm.
almost immediately when I came back from Korea. But I was riding this wave of that experience, of the Korean experience,
Okay.
where I was so free and I'd made all these friends from around the world who were so open-minded. And in Korea, I felt like I was becoming the best version of me.
Okay.
And right, so coming home with that wave, I had the confidence to tell my folks, and I phrased it very well, and I explained it in a sense of just honestly. And I was like, I just don't believe in the Christian God that you guys have raised me to believe, like the God of the Bible. I still believe that there is some sort of a universal force out there that's greater than just me, but it's certainly not, I certainly don't hold the same view that you guys hold and how you've raised me, to summarize what I said. And that actually that went really well, much better than I expected. But certain other things I haven't brought up with them, um, that I know will hurt them. And and it's like exactly like your parents. My parents are good people. They're very understanding, and they probably will get over it, and our relationship will be much closer once we've gone through this difficult time. But our family's been one of never ever sharing feelings and never ever discussing things. So there's that inertia, and also because I'm living at home, I don't want to create like this uncomfortable.
Okay.
Don't want to be in this heavy, uncomfortable situation. Um,
That's fair.
yeah, man.
Okay,
I
so
guess yes.
I'm gonna segue this in a completely new direction.
Let's do
You
it.
spoke about coming off the high from Korea. I want to know what it was like, not a university apartment. What was it like in your first real, this is my apartment? What was that experience like in the real world?
Well, it was tiny. I'll say that much. Like literally, it was literally a room which was the size of my bedroom in Hermanus, with a sliding door that went into a kitchen where if you stretched your like arms out, I mean I'm a small dude. If I stretch my arms out, it's not even saying much. You were touching the window and the sliding door, and like that was your whole space. And then there was one other door in the apartment, and that door was to this bathroom. And the Korean bathrooms are, the floor is the shower, like the
Oh,
whole bathroom is the shower. So in other words, like if you shower, you get the whole toilet wet. It's not like there's separate. It's not a slider and it's a separate shower and then you step out into your bathroom. No, like it's a hooky. It's tiny room.
okay.
Um,
It's a very
so
strange thing for me.
the space was tiny. That's the first impression. But I got used to it and I ended up loving it. It was just fantastic having my own space.
Okay. It's interesting. I don't know if you remember coming to my first apartment in Cape Town. Also very tiny.
I don't think I was ever there
Oh, really?
in your apartment.
Oh, okay. It was
The one in the toilet rolls in Gardens.
no. This is before that when I was staying in Gardens, but at Cliff Street. I was living
In the house.
I was living literally in a room so tiny that if you put your single bed touching the wall, I had to lift it a little to go out my door. The
That's crazy.
price of independence. And
Yeah.
tell me, I don't know if you've had this experience in the real world, but have you ever been broke as fuck? That is the only way to say
No,
it.
no, I've never been. Okay, so this is nothing like the death of your father, but it's related in the sense of something kind of something bad happens, and then years later you realize there were some positive effects that have come out of this. And I mean, I've I feel terrible saying this as a South African, but we grew up with very little money relative to my friendship group, my peer group.
Yes.
So, and I've never had much pocket money, and that's why I had a work holiday jobs and that. So not having a lot of money, like not having parents that can just support you and buy you stuff all the time, has really taught me to save. I'm too much so, even like I'm excessively Jewish at
Mm.
times
I,
in
I
a
wanted to say,
non-derogatory
I
way.
wanted to say you're looking a little more Jewish these days.
So yeah, I mean, like years and years and years of being jealous of stuff that everyone else had, and of wishing I could get this thing and wishing I could get that thing, and not having this thing, not having that thing, has taught me to save money
Hmm.
and be conservative and only buy stuff if I really need it. And it became very obvious in Korea, where a lot of my friends, well, in Korea you earn very good money for not hard work, and a lot of my friends would just blow their paychecks every month, and I couldn't understand how it was possible to spend so much money so easily on like nothing stuff,
Hmm.
like on just buying drinks and drinks and drinks, and some people just spent their entire budget on alcohol. It was outrageous. Um, and I mean, I sent back half my paycheck every month to pay off loans, and I still lived the most amazing lifestyle of
Hmm.
all time. And it blew my mind that these other people had so little self-control. So then, like, those years of the negative started feeling like a positive.
Okay, okay, that's cool. I think I've had a very similar experience to that because I've gone through some very poor times growing up. So when I started earning really well, it was like, all this money, I can't even spend it. And I have a similar experience here in Russia where many of my fellow teachers, they earn outrageous money. And then you'll just hear them like, oh, they've been like uh, on 4 holidays in a month. And I'm like, that's great, but why not just do one holiday and do a really good one and for a quarter of the price? Uh, and you can get the same enjoyment. But, everyone can live their own life. It's just, it's very strange for me to see how, for most people, as the pay scale goes up, just the spending goes up.
Yeah,
There's no like I only had 2,000 of X currency, and so I spent that, and now I have 20,000, so I'm gonna save 18,000, which was a very big thing for me to learn that most people don't have that self control in the real world.
yes, yes. Um, so I mean, I'm very glad that I've learned that. Um, it's just that now I feel like, okay, it almost feels like, okay, I've done my duty. I've now paid off my loans. Now what? Now I'm back home, and now I have to get a real job
Mhm.
in South Africa in the real world. And um, I mean, to segue back to this, it's taken it's taken the amount of time we've wanted to use on this podcast to get to this point. But I feel like we should just keep going and make a bumper version.
Okay, okay.
And I'm basically faced with this conundrum now, where I could go teach overseas again
Mhm.
for however many years and earn good money, but eventually I'm gonna have to settle somewhere, or like I mean, I don't want to be an English teacher for the rest of my life. That's not my calling in life.
Mhm.
That's not my passion in life. It's it isn't it's a very nice lifestyle. It's easy, it's comfortable, but I feel like I can do more. I can achieve more than that,
Mhm.
and I want to do something else with my life. So now here I am back in South Africa. What can I do? What can I start doing? Well, with my degree, BA in English, pretty much that qualifies me for nothing.
Other than a
So I
teacher.
feel like yeah, other than a teacher. So it's like I'm starting from scratch. It's like now I have to just apply for some crummy, like, whatever, editing, proofreading, copywriting thing. If I go do copywriting, I'll be using my skill of writing, which I love writing, but it will be not writing
As you'd
what
like.
I want to write, and it will be like selling stuff to people. It'll be advertising and marketing, and that's not. I have this kind of I have this worldview where I don't like intense materialism I don't like the way our society is so obsessed with spending
Hmm.
and buying stuff you don't need, and it feels like all I'm going to do is go be a part of that if I go become a copywriter. And it's not necessarily like that I'm going to get a job where it's you know selling just selling stuff, but
No, what I sorry.
it makes me feel a bit dirty. Like, it just makes me feel a bit dirty having to go into something like that.
Yeah, well, what I have to say to that is I personally have found that for me, I would never advocate my choices for anyone else, but for me, doing something merely for the money uh, has almost never been the correct decision. Um, that is actual life experience. I've made 4 or 5 times. I've made actual choices for the money. Um, I would say only once or twice out of that times I've actually got the money that I aimed for
Mm.
initially, but that even when I did, I wasn't personally satisfied, and I tend to aim for my goals. And so I will rather have a smaller apartment and have one less beer a week and one, uh, less steak and maybe just a thing of vegetables, and have a job that allows me the freedom to go for my goal than to
Yeah.
take something for the money. And this leads me to my most important piece of advice for the real world. As someone who has 13 working years experience, there are two very important truisms I find that, and one of them we might be the last generation for which that is a truism.
Okay,
Uh,
hit me.
the first one, which I think will always be true, is that it's not what you know, it's who you know, is more true than anyone actually knows. Everything I've ever achieved in life, every piece of opportunity I've grabbed, has all been who I knew opportunities. Very little to do with what I knew. And
Okay.
the second thing, which is a truism, is lying works in your favor. As long as you can as long as you can actually do what you are lying about, then you should lie about it in the working world. That is something I believe, even as unethical as that sounds, and I assure right now thousands of people in their minds would agree that that is a terrible idea. But let me just tell you, I have got where I've gotten in life because I have been willing to stretch my credentials to what I knew my abilities were. I'm
Okay.
not saying that I should apply to be a rocket scientist and be like, I know what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
yeah.
But if I have to be a computer programmer and they say you need 3 years working experience and you've done a year, I invent 2 years if I know I can do the job. And that is a very important truth, because you know what? I have seen people who have better credentials than I have, and I know I've done better jobs than them. And
Yeah, yeah.
so I don't feel unethical about lying about something like that. That's a
Yeah,
personal real world admission right now to you.
see, this is, it's interesting that you brought that up for me, because I'm, I'm coming up against this thing in my life now where I hold these certain beliefs, and it's like they're being tested now. So, for example, what you're saying, I know that you're right. Like, I know that what you're saying makes my life experience has taught me those same things. That makes perfect sense. That's the way the world works. But this, like, the inertia of this conservative Christian, be a good boy, work hard mentality, the inertia of that is so strong. Like, it makes me feel so guilty if
Mm-hmm.
I must not go out and use contacts to get a job, or um, eh, try and like wheedle my way into some position. And I know that's how it works. And I don't think that there's something intellectually, I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that. But there's almost like a physical gut response that's programmed into me
Mm-hmm.
that is saying, oh, this is dirty and gross and wrong. And like again, I'm in this weird cognitive dissonance place where I've got these two very conflicting things playing out at the same time.
Well, if I'm honest with you, I completely, like I said, I wouldn't advocate many of the things that I have done in my life to anybody. But as an honest confession, if I didn't follow the advice I just gave you, I would still be working a minimum wage job, 9 hours a day, living in a terrible place, and have
Yeah,
gone backwards or nowhere in my life. So
yeah,
for
yeah,
me, I can't believe that that is the more moral choice. I can't believe that the
yeah,
correct choice for me was to have not used those opportunities.
yeah. I, just the other day I was reading something that was written by someone with credentials and years of experience in this industry, and I read this and I looked at it and I said, I have none of your experience, but I can write better than you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can do it. I can write better than you, but how do I prove it? How do
Yes,
you prove that
I
to a
agree.
boss? Yeah,
What I will say is, I do make a particular point of like, that you should know that I've never applied for anything I couldn't do. Anything that I've ever applied
mm-mm-mm.
to do, I made sure that I could do it by the time that interview came around. Because if I'm gonna apply for the job, it should be something I can do. Um,
Yeah,
so I will say I've gone higher than I technically should be allowed to, but I've always stayed within what I know I can do.
mm. Um, yeah, Jacques. Uh, I, I mean, on a similar topic, to just keep going. Um, it's, this is so hard for me to express because it's like I've become a totally different person in the space of a couple of weeks. Where
Hmm.
all this, I mean, it was in, like I was saying earlier, the description I use is I was riding this wave, like I was coming off this wave in Korea where it was, I felt like every single year of my entire life has been better than the previous year. I've been happier, I've achieved more, I've become a better person. Everything's just been on the up and up and up and up and up. Then I come home from Korea and it feels like I've hit the peak of that wave, and it almost feels like a, a karmic thing is happening, like some fundamental mechanic of the universe is kicking in,
Okay.
and every wave has a peak and every wave has a trough. And now I'm heading into this trough, and it's almost like, well, years now it's payback time for 26 years of having it easy and things have gone well and you've just been happy and going along and going with the flow. Now it's time to school you.
Hmm.
That's what it feels like, and that's again like contributing to all this fear, which I've never been like this before.
Well,
All my beliefs are coming into question. Um, everything I've stood against, like just going to get a job and get a flat and a pension and
oh,
medical aid
damn
and
pension.
being part of the working world and all that stuff that I've never really believed in, is now making a lot more sense to me, and almost like it feels like something I have to do, like, but in some strange, like universe energy kind of
No,
like being forced into it kind of
I
way.
understand completely what you mean. I don't believe. First of all, I have to say I don't really believe in that like karmic business that you have peaks and troughs and you get, let's say, now a rough time because you've had 26 years of taking it easy. No, I think we make choices and they lead to certain consequences, be they peaks or troughs. We just never know
Mm,
which they're going to be.
that's the thing. You don't know
Um,
which one it's going to be.
because many people have lived lives of only peaks or only
Mm,
troughs, so to speak, and the the thing that you have to I think, get yourself in is when you're in a bad position or a position of stagnation, is to just keep searching for 4 or 5 opportunities at that moment and grab one. And if it's the wrong one, choose 4 or 5 more opportunities and grab until you find yourself back in a position of this is where I want to go.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, what I'm coming to now, where I feel like stagnation is a perfect word. I feel like I'm stagnating. And it's almost like I need to just grab some job, go do something just for a change, like for a change of scenery, a change of pace, some new direction. And I've done that before in my life. That's what I've always done. When I made the decision to change from computer science to BA, when I made the decision to go to UCT instead of Stellenbosch, when I went to Korea, like these big life decisions, I've not taken very seriously. I've just kind of grabbed at something that made sense at the time, and I've worked with it, and I've been able to just make the best of it. For the first time in my life now, I don't have that like happy-go-lucky, go with the flow, everything's gonna work out, it's a fun, new, exciting adventure, which has got me through everything up till now. It's just weird. Like I'm in this weird space where, for the first time, everything I've stood for and believed in is suddenly like, nope, wrong. That's not how it works.
I can't say that I've been through what you've been through. I can say that I've been through my version of that. I
Mm,
have stagnated, and I have felt that everything that I believed and worked me just was going against me, and that I didn't have that confidence as I'd had before that moment. And the only thing I can tell you from that is it'll end when it ends. Uh, and
yeah.
the other thing I want to tell you is it'll end, but don't make the mistake that I made, and I think most people make is I said, okay, I need to get a job to get out of this rut, out of this stagnation, and
Yeah.
then I stayed in that job for a year and a half, and
Yeah.
I didn't get out of the stagnation. I didn't get out of the rut. I stayed in it for an extra year and a half just now with the job. Um,
Okay.
and if it wasn't actually for the fact that the person who I was working for moved to India, I probably still would have been stuck in that thing, barring some great luck.
Yeah.
So don't make the mistake I made of when you're trying to get out of the rut, and you do the first idea that you get of just stopping it. Keep going. Decide, try to outline what you feel you need, even if it changes, but try to
Yeah.
outline it. And when you take that first leap, if it doesn't put you where you want to be, take another leap, even if it means taking a step backwards for a little bit to go forwards in
Mm.
a different time. And I can guarantee you your stagnation will not last as long as mine did. That's all.
Yeah, I hope so, man.
Well,
Um,
I can't guarantee it because I've been wrong before.
yeah. Yeah. Um,
I have just
I
one
guess,
last question for
yeah.
you. I really want to speak about what would
Okay.
you say, and because we're speaking about the real world, what were your perceptions of the real world? And now that you've come up against it, what is the reality? What is completely blown your mind? You thought, oh, I'm going to get back, I'm going to tackle the real world, I've got what it takes. And now you've come up against this one.
Okay. Okay.
What has blown your mind that you weren't expecting? For good or bad? Like, what have you come up
Yeah.
against?
Um, well, the first thing is now like job hunting with a BA and looking what's out there and realizing for the first time, I mean, I guess a part of me always knew this, but I'd never like actually looked for a job. So the reality of it had never sunk in. And the reality that's sinking now is I have zero skills like in the marketplace. I am not qualified to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 5 years of my life and an insane amount of money at university to do what? Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like I've learned. What have I learned? Like, what a good book is. Like it's
Well, I
it.
suppose you could try and become an editor or a publisher or something down that line.
I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm going to start applying for. And I'll do that, and I'm sure I'll be able to find a small amount of enjoyment in it. But I know that it's not gonna be. I. It's not for me.
Mhm.
I can't fit in that world. Um, it'll be like I'll have to get through the days for a while, I
That's
think.
fair. So going forward, what path are you hoping to forge for yourself into the world? What are you looking like? Which direction are you looking at heading? Do you have any idea?
Um, honestly, at the moment, I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, I, I still, I still wanna write a book. I still wanna play guitar and have a band going and all that. But it's like that stuff is is looking
Bleak.
eh, bleak, and basically like I have to now face the. This is what it feels like. It feels like these things that I hoped one day would become my life,
Mhm.
now I have to relegate to just a hobby,
Okay.
and then get like some small satisfaction once or twice a week when I can pull out my guitar and like jam a bit for myself instead of like, oh, I'm gonna go make a band.
Can I tell you what my biggest fear is? My
Yeah,
biggest fear is being my parents when I'm 45. My biggest fear
that
is not doing anything more.
yeah. That's not a it's not a fear of I wouldn't for me I wouldn't say fear, but it's just something I don't want to happen, and it feels like that's what's happening to me
Mhm.
now, and it also it's almost it's almost like it's inevitable, which is that's what's worrying me so much. Um,
Well,
and I know it's dumb. Like I know all this is dumb because things change, random things come up that you can't predict. Like all this, there's no there's no definites
mhm.
ever in life. And I know all these things. And I know this last hour we've been chatting, I've come across like retarded, but that's it's so difficult for me because it's like the first time I felt this way.
Yes.
And I guess I just have to get it out because that's the truth of what's happening to me at the moment.
No, that's fair. And if I'm honest with you, I actually take a little bit of satisfaction, and this is strange, but I take a little bit of satisfaction in kind of coming to the realization that there is no purpose for your life. There is no ultimate meaning, if you want to, ultimately,
Mm,
when you die, even if you die as like, I don't know, Shakespeare of our generation, 10,000 years from now, probably you'll be forgotten. And
yeah, that I don't care about
no,
at
no, no,
all.
but what I mean is that lends itself a certain kind of freedom on your life. That means that whether you ultimately become your parents, or whether you ultimately go for your dreams and succeed, or go for them and fail, it's almost irrelevant to anyone except yourself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of freeing to me, that thought, because it tells me, you know what, you might as well go for it, because if you screw up it doesn't matter, but if you succeed, for you it'll be the greatest thing ever.
Now, Jacques, okay, what you just said, like literally 2 weeks ago, I gave that speech to my parents. Like I just those exact words, babe,
Okay.
pretty
Okay.
much.
Verbatim.
And almost almost like overnight. Okay, well they've been giving me speeches as well about like the real world and getting a job and rah, rah, rah. But almost overnight, like their reality has taken over my reality.
You've been
Like their frame of
brainwashed. Ah!
I've it feels a bit like that. And now it's like I can't get that attitude back. I can't get that attitude back of like, so what? Like let me just have fun and enjoy life and
Oh, it's
like
not
go
about enjoyment.
do things and
I think I have to say that I think one of the biggest misnomers, misunderstandings, complete failures in humanity's line of thinking, personally, at least in my
mm,
opinion, is this idea of going for what you want to do for enjoyment's sake. I think that's
Okay.
a lie. I think happiness is easy to attain. If we go to Liberia, there's a child living there in a mud hut with no clothes, no education, and maybe a couple of sticks. And you know what? That guy
And he's happy.
is happy. Exactly. Because happiness is relative. We adapt as a species.
Yes.
We're very adaptable. So it's not about happiness. It's about who you want to be, what you want to achieve, and succeeding or failing by your goals. There are tons of people who've lived exactly what I've said, and they've never achieved their goals. And I go into my life, my mindset of my life, knowing that. I don't lie to myself and say, no, I'm going to do something. I understand most people fail when they follow
Yeah.
goals. But it's not about enjoyment. It's about what you want to attempt to do. If you want to if you want to be a doctor and you want to cure malaria, for example, you have to understand that that decision includes 7 years of study and sleepless nights and long hours of work. And you make that decision despite your happiness instead of your enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing people misunderstand. So when you say, like, you've lost that zest for life, that is a serious issue, and I don't know why. We should probably look into that. But for who you want to become and what you want to do, that decision shouldn't be made based purely on happiness, because when you make it on enjoyment, you're going to make a bad decision, because that's why people have midlife crises, because 15 years from now they don't want to do what they're doing anymore, and they thought they did 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how I feel now. I'm like, all these things that I've wanted to do, and I've kind of half done and started and played around with. Now I'm like, I don't, all this, no, I don't know, this is, no, this is not happening anymore. It's not doing it for me anymore. And I get your point of, you do what you want to do, like the thing you've told yourself you're going to do, you do it in spite of your happiness. That rings very true for me. Like when I've been caught up in writing or even playing guitar or whatever, often it's like it feels almost like a duty. Like this is this thing that I'm going to do, and it doesn't matter. And it's almost like it. Even when it doesn't bring me happiness, it brings me like this. Or it used to bring me this sense of like deep fulfillment.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not saying it as well as you do. The way you said it was perfect, and I completely get what you're saying. But that I've lost touch with that thing now. Like, but my mindset has just been very negative over the last few days, and or the last few weeks rather, and it's clouded. It's like clouded everything else.
Okay, well, let's speak about that. So you've come into this complete mind shift. Explain to me this shift. Explain what happened. Like, walk me through the whole thing.
The thing is that it's almost feels like chemical or biological. Like my day-to-day life is exactly the same as it's been the same for months and months and months now. I eat well, I exercise, I write, I'm living at home. That's been constant. And when again, like when I was riding this wave coming back from Korea and I started writing this fantasy story, I was so pumped. Like I worked 10 hours a day straight till late at night. I got up in the morning, no problem, energy flowing, amped. And it kind of just, it feels like it wore down, like the energy just wore down over time.
Okay.
But not wore down in the sense of it got gradually less and less. Almost like within the span of a week, it just stopped.
In what
Um,
way, though?
in the way where I like had this realization, what you're doing is pointless. Like, this adds nothing to the world. Like, this is silly. And so then I started writing this other stuff,
Mhm.
which when I started writing that, I'm like, okay, this is like deep and dark and serious and psychoanalytical and digging into the roots of who you are as a person. And now all that's done is stripped my ego bare and made me feel like I'm useless and retarded. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm through that. Now what? Oh, now I need to go get a job. um,
Well, have you finished your book that stripped your ego bare?
no, I mean
To be very
it's
honest with you, if nothing else, I'm very excited to read it. Like, regardless,
yeah,
like, and
yeah,
this is the thing. You say it feels pointless. You get to this point, but that's why I say you have to define what your satisfaction is going to be. So, for example,
mm,
when I think about, let's say, recording an album, if my satisfaction from that would be is, even if it's absolutely horrendous, which it probably will be, even if it's absolutely horrendous, and but one person finds that music, just one person, and even if it's only one song, grabs them and completely inspires them to pick up a guitar and write a song for another person, to me that is worth the effort. Now I understand this is not for everybody, but personally, and
mm,
it's worth it for me because I defined it like that. I get meaning from that. I've
mm,
decided that would give me meaning. But that's the thing, I decided that because there is no ultimate meaning, you get to decide what your meaning is. And
yeah, yeah,
and that can be like, you know what, I just want to be an accountant with 2 children, drive a BMW and a house, and I will get my meaning from that. And if that's your decision, fair play. You can get your meaning from that. But I think it's important that you know you're defining that every
yeah,
every time
yeah.
you make a decision. So maybe, I don't know why you've lost focus and stuff, but maybe you've just forgotten why you're doing what you're doing. Maybe you.
What you said now makes a lot of sense, and I'm very glad you said it. It's excellent advice. But yeah, okay, here's another way I can try and phrase
Okay,
what I'm going through, because I'm still trying to figure it out as well, because this has never happened to me
okay.
before. Um, it's like it's almost like I feel the simplest way I can say it is like I almost feel like, oh, I figured it out. Like, yeah, I figured out life. Oh, you do. You make your own meaning. Oh, okay. You Happiness is not important. You just decide you do this thing. Oh, okay. You can adapt to any situation and find happiness. Oh, blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, figured it out. That sucks. Like,
Well, okay.
that's what it come to now. Like now I'm like, oh, that's just not so cool.
There's a few
And now I
things.
need to figure out how to make it cool again.
There's a few things you can take comfort from. Like I said, I went through. I don't know if I can say the same, but my version of that a couple of years ago.
Mm.
And all I can tell you is that eventually you get out of it to some degree.
Yeah, yeah,
Not completely.
yeah,
Second thing you can take comfort from is it's a form of life you've never experienced before, and your whole human experience wouldn't be complete without it. So you can enjoy that. And thirdly,
that's true.
and thirdly, um, there is, I think, something lost in that. I often get sad because I feel like that when I'm speaking with people, or I feel like that when I have to get a job because I'm good at speaking to people if I need to. When I have an ability to switch almost to a mode, you can say it, where I'm like, hack
Mm.
life. And it's that's not the way I'd like to phrase it, but it is a very depressing thought that there are these patterns and sequences that the world plays out, and if you follow a certain methodology, 9 times out of 10 you're going to have success. Uh,
Mm.
and that honestly is one of the most depressing things I've ever discovered. And
Mm.
now you've hit that. And there's not much that you can do. You've just discovered
Yeah.
that. Like, if you
Yeah.
had solved that problem, you'd probably be like a renowned world philosopher. You know what I mean? It's a hard problem. And all I can say is that don't confuse this like world problem where you've like, oh, now I've figured it out, with what you want to achieve. That's a big mistake.
Mm.
I made
Mm.
that
Mm.
mistake. I confused the two, and I kind of got lost with where I wanted to go for a couple of years. Because I
That's
confused.
really good advice.
Yeah,
Like, that's genuinely good
yeah, I
advice.
confused that for a while, and so just remember to keep that separate. That's all I can say.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, man. That's I think I needed to hear that. Um, okay. Uh, you just blew my mind. So I
Okay.
need to, I had something I was gonna go into. Let's see if it comes back to me. Um, okay. Yeah. This is what it was. Earlier when you said what I'm going through now, it's like a whole new type of experience that I've never experienced before, and there's value in that. Again, with this, like, I've always been, since I was a child, I've written stuff.
Hmm.
I wrote a whole book when I was like a teenager, not a teenager, like a 14-year-old.
Yes.
Um, and I sent it off to publishers and I was all excited. Like, that's always been something I wanted to do. And then as I got a bit older, I started like with this writerly thing. The idea got in my head, okay, if you want to be a writer, you need to observe life and you need to like watch people and study things and almost like take mental notes. Like, you've got a mental tape recorder running at all times on yourself, like on your own experience and in what you notice in other people. And so I value like new experiences a lot. Like, for example, the story we alluded to about that time that my phone got stolen in Salt River, like, that was a horrible experience objectively. Like, if that happened to someone else, they might have been the worst thing ever. But I'm like really glad I went through that because it it was such a unique experience. Like, I'm like, no one, or like, this is just incredibly unique, and I was so alive in that
Mm.
moment. That was great. Um, that like, so even when I'm in these dark places and like I think these dark thoughts and that, I value it because it's like the one day this will be material for a book.
Hmm.
um, and now I'm writing that book, and like, I'm doing this thing that I've always wanted to do. I'm actually living like the dream, but it's feels terrible. Like, it's that, I guess that's what it is. Like, it almost feels like I've worked to get to this point my whole life,
Yes.
where I can just like have no money problems, I have free time, I can just do this thing and I want to write. And here I am writing. It feels, it's like it's the most depressed I've ever been.
Oh, did I?
It's so crazy.
It's so funny.
It's just crazy.
It's so funny you say that. I don't know if I ever told you this story. Growing up, uh, I first wanted to be a priest or a scientist. Till I was
Yes,
about
yes.
17 when I fell in love with music. And then I decided I wanted to either be a musician or work in radio. And I was about 22, 23 years old working in radio. I did some work for a national station as well, and it was like my career was at this point where it was really taking off. And I was in
Mm.
a very, like I said a few years ago, I went through the same thing, and it was actually at this time when I was working my dream job. Um,
Yes.
and it was very funny because what made me realize this, what awakened me to this, like my version of what you're going through is, I met an old girlfriend from school, and
Mm.
she said to me, "Hey Jacques, how's it going?" And I was like, "Oh, it's not too bad." And we spoke for a bit, and she's like, "What you doing now?" And I said, "Oh, I'm working at this radio station, and I'm doing this with a national station." And she was like, "Oh wow, I'm so glad you're living your dream." and I realized I was living my dream, and it was a bit cuck. It was a little bit terrible, and it was a very strange moment because I had to pretend to be happy because she was so excited that I'd got to where I said all those years ago I was going to be. But actually, I felt really depressed in that moment and for a
Oh
long
no,
time afterwards. Because
that's hilarious.
I realized then that achieving your dreams are uh, not as rewarding as you would think. And that's why I say it's not about the happiness, it's about that what your satisfaction is. And I realized that the journey there is actually what's more important than the goal.
Okay, dude, okay, I think actually we just solved life. That's
Okay,
what we
we have
did.
solved
We,
life.
we literally just solved life. Because the way you phrase that is perfect. That's what's happened to me now. Like, I've literally worked for 26 years to get exactly where I am, and now here I am. Like, I've made it. And now it's like, maybe it's that I don't want to finish
Hmm.
the book, because if I do, then it's like, okay, I wrote a book. Now what?
Yeah, you're complete.
What now?
You can.
Now I'm complete. Now, what do I do now? Um, Probably that's exactly what's going on, because the journey has been awesome.
Hmm.
Like I said, every year of my life has felt so much better than the previous year. Like everything's just like everything's fallen into place, and the decisions I thought were wrong ended up being right. And um, like for example, when I was applying for Korea, I failed my first interview, and I was like, how is this possible? Like, I've
Hmm.
worked so hard for this, and there were all these funny little circumstances, and it felt like again the universe had conspired against me.
Hmm.
So I failed the first interview, but then I got another interview, and I passed it, and I got like the best location. I met the most awesome people. Like it, I'm sure that if I got that first job, my life in Korea wouldn't have been half as awesome as it was.
Interesting. Yes.
So then I look back on that, and I'm like, oh, again, there was a plan for my life. The universe got me through it, whatever. And that mindset like always keeps me going. Whether that belief is how can I say, like, I use that belief as a tool,
Hmm.
in the sense of, not that, like, I used to believe it blindly as a child, like that God has a plan for your life. And then as I got smarter and started questioning things, I was like, this is a useful belief for me in my
Okay.
life,
Okay.
because this belief lets me not take things too seriously, lets me make rash is the wrong word, lets me make like out of the box type decisions.
Okay.
Lets me do things that I normally wouldn't. Oh man, why am I saying this so poorly now? Um, uh, it lets me just do stuff. Like, I'll just decide to do something, and I'll just go do it,
Hmm.
even though maybe it works out badly, maybe it works out great. Who knows? You can never know. I'm just gonna go do this thing.
Hmm.
And that belief got me to do all this stuff. Um, and now, or rather, using that belief as a tool, like whenever I faced a difficult decision or fear or doubt, I'll just be like, no man, you believe this thing. Just convince myself I believe this thing, and it would get me through. Um, and again, now I'm at the point where I look back, and I'm rational, and I'm like, yeah, every time you've been in a difficult place and you've struggled to make a decision, you've just made a decision and gone with it and made the best of it. And that's worked for me for my entire life. And now here I am faced with another decision that I'm struggling to make. And suddenly I can't use that trick anymore.
Hmm.
That trick that's worked for so long. But but I mean, I went on a crazy rant again, but actually all I'm saying is, it's just like what you said, the journey up to where you are to get to your dream. Then you get to your dream, and you have that moment where you're like, oh, I'm actually living my dream. And then you're like, this isn't so great. Like, what now?
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, what did you do after that? After you had that? epiphany?
What did I do? Well, the first thing I did, if I'm very honest with you, is I was depressed for 2 years.
The worst advice ever, Jacques.
Yeah, I'm not recommending it. I'm saying I was depressed for 2 years because I was trying to figure out when you live your dream and it's not that great, what do you do?
Yes.
And I discovered that the trick is not to have one dream, but to have like as many dreams as you can possibly think of, and try and live them all
Okay.
concurrently. And the reason for that is because you can discard the dreams and the goals that you move past, and you can
Mm.
add new goals as you get them all the time. So some dreams I'm feeling right now, let's say I feel like I really want to study Spanish, was a dream I had up until about a year ago. And it's something that
Okay.
I've had my whole life. I'm like, I want to learn Spanish. And about a year ago, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to learn Spanish. Not because there's anything wrong with the language. It's a beautiful sounding language, but I replaced it with something else that is now more relevant to me as a person. And I discarded the dream.
Okay.
And so by having many, many different things I want to achieve, I always have something to learn. And so
Okay.
what drives me forward is, like you say, you like new experiences. What drives me forward is always learning something new. And
Okay.
you've got to try and find something that works with what inspires you, with what motivates you. And what motivates me is being dropped in the sea of, holy crap, what is this? And then figuring it out. That's what inspires me. And so I added a lot of that to my life.
Okay.
And some of it that I added was really mundane and boring, and some of it that I added was extremely crazy. So, for example, I'll give you a couple. In the really
Yeah.
mundane thing, I always wanted to write a story, and I've never been able to finish one of my ideas. I'm really good at coming
Okay.
up with ideas, and never was able to finish one. And so, as a very boring, straightforward one, for many people, I was like, I'm gonna write a 2,500 word story, and I'm gonna finish it.
Okay.
And that's an example of
Okay.
a very boring goal. And I was like, it doesn't matter how terrible it is, just get to the end.
Okay.
And on the flip side, another goal I've got is I want to bungee jump out of a helicopter into a live volcano in South America. Because you can do that. And that sounds amazing. I really want to do that. And so these are just two things. And every day I wake up and I look at my list of things that I want to do, my goals, all of my dreams. And I add and I remove and I look. And I get a little bit closer to fulfilling what one that means something to me now. And I now take joy not in the actual achievement of that goal. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes you wake up and you look at that list and you're like, But then you know what you do? When you have a conversation with someone and you're like, what are you trying to do? That passion comes back, it reignites, and you realize this is why I'm doing it. Because now I
Yeah.
can feel the hunger inside myself to do this. And so that's what helped me. That's one of the things that helped me. Another thing that really helped me was I got rid of bloodsuckers. It was my term for friends that led me in a negative way.
Yeah.
I had really inordinate amount of friends. I don't know. I led myself down a bad sentence. I had probably like 2,000 friends or some insane amount of
Whoa.
friends. And the real truth is you can't have 2,000 friends. The
Can't.
management is insane. And immediately, 2,000 might be exaggerating. I might have had close to like 900 or something like that. But I had an unreasonable amount of people who were classified as friends. And this was
Yeah.
to do with working in the radio and with a little bit of communicating with journalists and newspapers and stuff like that. My Twitter feed was very big at the time. And so I had all these people that I was communicating with. And I just decided, you know what? So many of these people drain hours and energy from my life and make me feel bad for absolutely no reason. And
Yeah,
they're,
yeah.
they're, they're all nice people. They're all good people, as far as I know. But I had to make a decision for myself. And I was like, how many friends do I want? And that's the first thing I decided. How many friends do I want? And I realized I don't know how many friends I want. And so I was honest with myself. I don't know. And I was like, who do I think are necessary to be good for myself? And I chose people who I felt brought out the qualities in me that led me to being a person I wanted to be. And these
Okay.
people I decided were the friends I wanted going forward. And everyone else, I didn't like do anything mean to them. I just kind of stopped speaking to them and let
Yeah,
communication die
yeah.
and sort of phased them out of my life. And for some people it was really difficult, I'm not going to lie, because there were some really good friends in that list. But I had to make a decision that was going to lead me to what ultimately made me feel better about myself in terms of where I was going.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is sometimes, for example, when I have to practice guitar or write, let's just take those two very boring, mundane examples. When I sit down before I have to do it, I have a real sense of like, but every single time afterwards, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. I do feel a
Mm.
sense of I'm glad, and that's why I do it, because that feeling afterwards makes me know that it is still something I want to do. And
Yeah.
the moment I finish something repeatedly for some time, and I realize I'm not getting that satisfaction anymore, then I know that I've probably lost my love for that goal.
Mm.
And sorry for
Mm.
speaking so long.
No, that's perfect. Again, you're just like dropping bombs of wisdom over here. Um, maybe that's part of it. Because like when I went to Korea, a big goal was the band and playing guitar. And there was a stage where one day I just played my guitar and it didn't feel that awesome anymore.
Mhm.
And then I was like, oh, whoa, okay, this isn't like the most awesome passion of all time that's gonna fuel you for the rest of your life. And I love playing guitar and I'd love to make it my life, but it's not like, it's not this all consuming,
Mhm.
I would do that over anything else in life. Um, and that was a big realization. And then I was maybe a bit rudderless for a while, but because everything else in my life was so awesome at the time, it didn't really bug me.
Yes, yes.
Now I'm back here and I'm writing and like I'm writing and it's awesome. And then one day I wake up and it's like, yeah, it's fun and it's nice, but it's not the most awesome thing of all time ever that I couldn't see myself doing for the rest of my life. And I guess I'm just at the place now where it's like I need to figure out a new goal,
Mhm.
a new dream, a new goal.
Well, get
And
many.
maybe that's, yeah, maybe that's what it is. I've just lost two, like, lost is the wrong word, but two enormous motivating goals are now two, this would be nice goals
Yeah.
instead of like,
What I will say is it's also important to not forget that a very big part of being a person is the more you do something, the less special it feels, if that makes sense.
oh, dude, yeah,
Like
I mean, my best, yeah,
that first time you played like a Blink song, those four chords, you were like, I am the best guitarist in the world.
mm,
And the problem is you do get to a point where those feelings become so rare as to almost start feeling non-existent. And
yes, yes, yes,
it's
yes,
not that you don't enjoy it anymore. But you shouldn't confuse the loss of that with the loss of enjoyment as well. But it's just like any drug addict. You're searching for the high.
you build a tolerance
Yeah.
up, yeah, you
And
build up a tolerance.
I think many people.
My example, dude, that for me that was sex in a very big way.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it was in the beginning it was like the most exciting and awesome and thrill, like this is the greatest thing of all time. And then you have a girlfriend, steady, and you start having a lot of sex, and then after a while you're like, it's still awesome and like this great thing, but it's not the greatest thing of all time. What is going on? Like, and it's exactly like a drug addict
Okay,
and tolerance. You
real
just build up tolerance to it.
real world confession.
Mm.
Um, have you ever had a moment in a relationship where the woman was like, hey, 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 and you thought, you didn't have to follow through with it, but you actually thought, I'd rather be doing something else right now?
Dude, okay,
And
okay.
real world confessions now. You don't hear this in a
This is
sitcom.
okay. This is one of the moments where I hated myself the most. Okay, I was with my girlfriend in Korea, and in her apartment. She lived in a different city, like to me, so we were only an hour away. I mean, I could be at her house in an hour. So I had this, like, it was for me like the most dream life, where in the week I could do my own thing, and in the on the weekend I saw my girlfriend, and it was fantastic. I was like, this is the dream, like, because I love having a steady partner, but I don't like a clingy person where it's all your time is just with them.
Yes.
So perfect, living the dream. So been together for months, and at her apartment one day, and she, like, we were busy having sex, and I'm like, I would rather be in my apartment now playing Icewind Dale 2 than be doing this.
Yes.
Like, I just, if I'm honest, like, that's would be more fun for me right
In
now.
fairness, Icewind Dale
And
is a great game.
it is, dude. Have you played the second one? It was fantastic.
Okay.
What is? I didn't even, but I didn't even finish the game. But just, just it in that moment, like I got bored of the game, and I was like, okay, cool. I've seen everything that is to see here. Um, but I was literally like, you know what? But then, yes, this is why I hate myself. Because then that's exactly what I did. Then I like finished up and said, all right, I need to go do work at home, whatever, and then I left. It was not as bluntly, like
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
very, I I said it nice, like I didn't hurt her
Mhm.
feelings or anything, but um, I basically, like, I manipulated the situation to get this thing that I wanted,
Yes.
which, I mean, again, like if you had spoken to me a month before that incident, that would never have happened to
Mhm.
me. Like, I'd be like, dude, what? You, you, you wanted to go play a game instead of having sex. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Um, but it's a very real confession that
Mhm.
yeah.
I have done the same, and I think that's the point. That the reason I asked that question is exactly because I think we're all guilty of that. Here is something that whole genres of literary work are based around sex. And it's a cornerstone of human existence, and yet it is something that when you have enough of it, you'd rather be doing something that you'd never be doing when you're having none of it. And that's exactly what one of the problems is with being a human. It's not that sex is not fun, it's not that it's not great, but it's just that when you have an overload of something, you get to a point where you're like, you know what, I'd rather be doing something I'm not getting an overload of, because
Mm,
that is
mm,
what's appealing to us.
mm. So, okay,
On that question, I
let's see
wanted
if
to
we
just
can.
ask you one thing. With your
Yeah.
work, do you take adequate breaks to ensure that you don't overwork yourself and don't?
Well, that's a good point that you raise. Over the last while now, I've been working like non-stop basically, which has been too
Mhm.
much. Um,
Because I hate to use the sex analogy, but it does apply to your work.
yes, yes. Um, uh, this is something my mom and I were chatting about the other day, and we were talking about the differences between my generation, like you and I, and her generation. And for us, we've grown up in a culture and with a worldview of constant stimulation, constant new stuff, the latest product, this technology is just happening, this breakthrough in science, the blah blah TV adverts, new show. Have you watched this? I'm done. Okay, let's watch the next thing. Like this, almost like constant sensory overload and constant new stuff we're being bombarded with. So for us, we get tired of something really quickly, and then we want something new, and we want something new. And for them, like for her, you grow up in like a small town. There's like you become a doctor or a teacher or a lawyer. You go do that. You get married to one person. You have children. Like there's this every few years is like the next step in life, and it's like this structured thing which kind of forces enjoyment to be um, no. It forces you to not fall into the trap that you and I have just been speaking about, where you get overload and tolerance to something because you get too much of it
Yes.
too soon. And I think that's a very, very big difference between us and our parents.
That's very interesting. I never thought of it like that, but it's very true. It must be, because I see it in my own parents. And I see it also in when teaching my students, that they have more sensory overload than we have. It's insane.
Like crazy amounts.
And I just, one of the things that is one of my goals that I currently work on is, it's really difficult for me to do, but I try to never, I don't say I never multitask, but I try to, as much as possible, single task. To give full focus on a single task that I'm doing. Because I'm not sure if it's a problem for other people, but for me, it's very easy to get into a phase of like making dinner, making myself coffee, listening to a podcast, taking a photo, let's say, writing notes, and I do all of this at the same time, and then I do a bad job of multiple of my tasks. And so,
and you enjoy none of them.
Yes, I do enjoy none of them. That's the truth. And so a very big thing that I gained from Tim Ferriss actually was he recommended trying to stay on a single task. And it's something I fall off the wagon regularly, but I keep trying to get back on the focus of staying more focused on a single task. And I would like to get some pleasures out of maybe more slow reward tasks. One of the most enjoyable jobs I've had was when I worked on a farm for a year. And
when on earth did you do that? I had no idea that happened.
When I moved back to Hermanus from Cape Town, the first year I was working on a farm.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
It was really cool. It was a lettuce farm. I really enjoyed it. I'm a terrible farmer. I'll just say that right at the beginning. I'm a horrible farmer, but I really enjoyed it. And
was it because it was like that simple lifestyle of one thing at a time, taking your time?
There is a level of enjoyment I find to be had from you wake up at 7, let's say. And I'll use an example for a regular day, not at high season or at low season when you work too much or too little, but a regular day. You wake up at 7, you go, you do your farm activities, and you finish in the evening. But when you're finished, you're finished. There is no overlap between work life and after work life. When work ends, it ends. And it's one of the few jobs I've ever had where I can honestly say I enjoyed that when my job was finished, I had complete freedom. I never had anything to do for work. I never had any tests I had to prepare, or I never had any broadcasts or shows I had to prepare. And even though I don't think it would satisfy me for my whole life, I think that experience stays with me. That simple life was very appealing for that short time, and I learned a lot from that whole feeling of like, you know what, having a job and nothing outside of that you're obligated to, and that's what I liked about farming.
Because that makes so much sense to me. The simple life thing, I believe that there's a part of every single human being that's hardwired to operate that way because I subscribe to evolutionary psychology. I think there's something to be said from thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of human beings have lived a certain type of
Hmm.
lifestyle where there was zero sensory overload,
Yes.
where you did a single task, where every day was kind of similar. And that's what our brains are hardwired for, that's what our genes are programmed for. And now suddenly we're in the information age
Hmm.
and the age of the internet, and it's like we don't know how to deal with this. It's like it's it's so far out of what we're designed to cope with. Um,
Well, I think we'll adapt
and
eventually, but sucks to be us for
but we
for
are. I
the
mean,
meanwhile.
we've all adapted. Every single person has adapted, but we've adapted, and it's obvious that we're not designed for this
Yes, yes.
100%. Like we've adapted, like we're not designed for
Yeah, yeah.
this crazy overload lifestyle. Um,
Uh,
and I mean, living in cities with millions of other people always around you, like that's
uh,
never been a part
I want to say to
of
you,
human life.
when I get back to South Africa from Russia, the first thing I'm doing is going on a hike up a mountain by myself. Just by
Yeah,
myself. I cannot tell you how much I miss that. Moscow is a great city, but you just have no private life. It's insane.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if South
Um,
Korea was the same for you.
um, I was lucky because I was in my city was about 280,000 people
Hmm.
big, so it was a perfect size. Um, when I went to Seoul, I got a bit of that sensation, but I traveled for 2 weeks in China, and when I was in Beijing and even some of the smaller cities being like only 10 million people, that was impossible. I can't imagine living in such insane overcrowding where at like a regular weekday at 11:52 in the morning, where you'd expect things to be quiet, like every bus, every subway is packed where you are like shoulder to shoulder with other people. It was fun because I was
Hmm.
a tourist for like a week or two, but to live like that every day, man, wow.
In a similar way, here in Russia, you can go for a walk at like 11 or 12 at night, and people are then walking their dogs or going for jogs and stuff
Oh
after work, and I'm
man.
just like, it's insane. Like, like this is like time. Like, I would think that you'd go to sleep, and now most people are just like jogging and stuff at that time. It's a very different world almost compared to what we're used to. I will say
Yeah.
what's great about the summers here: 11 o'clock at night, the sun still shines. The winters here, no, the summers here. 11 o'clock at
Wow.
night, the sun can still shine, which is great. Um, okay. Final question about the real world.
Okay, final question.
Final question about the
Yes,
real
I
world.
think we should start wrapping this guy up.
Okay. Um, I have forgotten my question. Ah, I have remembered. I have remembered my question. Going forward into the new world, what do you think are going to be some of the greatest strengths that you've learned? And what do you think are some things, like, because you say you've been evaluating your life, what are some things that
Yeah.
in your evaluation you think are really going to help you going forward, and other things that you're really going to have to work on?
Okay, that's a very good question. And a lot of the things that I thought I had all figured out, now I'm like, I don't know if I have them all figured out. Um, I don't know. I'm not answering your question. Let me just answer your question.
I
Okay.
thought you were like, no, you were like, we're going to leave, I'm going to go now. Not answering your
Um,
question.
no. No, I meant like what the line of thought I was going down was going to be a long ramble instead of just to the point. So I need to get better at working with people again and networking and being vibey and social and out there and meeting people, which I got really good at in Korea. And now, having been at home for so long, I've just lost it. So that's number one what I'll have to work on. A big strength is like what we mentioned earlier, where I know that I can survive on a tight budget, and I'll probably have to for a while. Um, that's a strength. Um, I would say a strength is like I'm all happy and optimistic and everything's going to work out and all that, because that's been my greatest strength always for
Okay.
26 years, and hopefully it'll pop back. Hopefully I just need to come out of whatever funk I'm in. Um, that that mindset, it 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 works. It just works. Like if you can see everything as a fun new adventure and a challenge and not take it too seriously, that really does work. And if I could just convince myself of that again, then
Quickly, lie to your brain.
yeah. Um, Jacques. Otherwise, I don't know. That's all I've got at the moment. That's all that's coming to me
Okay.
right now.
Okay. And some areas you think you're going to have to work on?
Well, like I said, the definitely like networking, social,
Oh yeah, about that.
being with other people a lot again.
It is very strange. I'm quite good at speaking to people, but I did have a phase where I was unemployed for about 6 months, and I was just staying at home, and I got progressively more bleak. And I did find for quite a while afterwards, even when I got a job, it did take me a little bit of time to get that feel of human interaction outside back to what
Okay.
it was. I think it's a fairly normal thing, because it is kind of like you it's almost like you have to refresh those neural pathways, like you haven't
Yes,
used them in
yes,
a while,
yes.
I think.
Yeah. And it's especially challenging for me because I am naturally a loner. Like
Hmm.
I always, it's like 80% of the time I'm happier to be by myself than around people. And in 20% of the time, I really just want to like be with friends and have a party and joel. But when it's not in that 20%, I'm like, I'm just gonna do my own thing.
It
It's just more fun
explains
that
the
way.
Icewind Dale incident.
I know, man, I know, because that just happened to fall in the wrong percentage. Just
Yeah,
that
dude, don't worry. It happens to the best of us. It's okay.
it does happen to the best of us. Um, but that's something I need to work on again. And then I guess just being open to learn whatever new skill. Like even this is what I need to work on. I need to work on certain things I think are meaningless in the world and have no meaning to me, but I'm gonna have to just do them anyway.
Yes, yes.
That I'm gonna have to work on. Like I just am gonna have to do this thing for a while.
I have no idea whether this story will help you or not, but it was something that I found very interesting. I am a big fan of Taoism, and
Okay.
there's a story that they have, that there was a guy who was a thief, um, and thieving is seen as a bad trait. But
Okay.
this man was a good man, but the only thing he was good at was thieving. And he went to the king and he was like, listen, I am the greatest thief in your kingdom, but I'm a good person, so use me in a way that will serve. Um, and the king said, sure, whatever, guy. And and 2 or 3 years later, there was a war, a stalemate between two great powers, this king and another king, and they were deadlocked. It would be bloody, and there was no assurance that either side would come out victorious. Um, and the king remembered the thief, and he called the thief up, and the thief came and he said, how am I serving? He says, I think your time has come. I want you to sneak into the tent of the opposing king, and I want you to steal something so that we may present it to him tomorrow and show that we have superior troops. And so the thief used his stealth to steal something, and the story repeats numerous times. He steals progressively more impressive things until eventually the other army just retreats. And the king rewards his thief for his brilliant stealth and ability to steal for the kingdom. Um, And literally it's just a story in Taoism about how even something which is a terrible trait, such as laziness or thievery or something like that, can be used in a beneficial way. And your goal should not be to just be like, oh, I really hate that I have this thing that gives me a negative. It should be, there's this thing that I believe is bad. How can I use it to get the most out of it? And I think that's something that resonated with me, and I don't know if that'll help you going forward, but maybe there's something of that you can think on some of the negative things you're going.
That's a good philosophy to have. Yeah. Yeah, I guess like I mean that applies very much to the writing. Like what I'm writing at the moment could be, a lot of people will take it as really dark and like negative, but I believe there'll be some people out there who will see it and be like, oh, I get this. No, you're just interested in examining yourself and being honest, and it maybe sounds negative, but the intention behind it is always good. The intention behind it is always to help others. Yeah, but that story is actually just the line that resonated with me. I, hilariously, is your time will come, and I need to get into that mindset again of like, maybe it's going to be cuck for a bit, but my time will come.
Yeah. Every dog has its day, to use the oldest catchphrase.
Jacques, on that note, on that slightly more uplifting note, shall we call it a night?
I think that's a great idea. Have a good one.
Okay, cool, man. It's been great chatting to you. See you next time.
Okay, cheers.